Right, so hello everyone. Today I'm speaking to Dr. Van Bladel, who is a Senior Associate Fellow at Egmont, Royal Institute for International Relations. Hello, Dr. Bladel.
Hi.
So I have several questions for you related to Ukraine. So I would like to start from the first one. What is your view on the latest developments in Ukraine?
Well, unfortunately, we have to say that that we observe that Russia has taken the initiative again on the front line, and that Ukraine is on the defense, and that is a tough time for the Ukrainian side now on the front line. Clearly, since let's say the autumn of last year, we saw that Russia has regained a little bit of confidence and could, reestablish itself a little bit on over time on the front line, and could take over the initiative. And this is what we are seeing now. And now it is, for me, what is fundamental now to observe is how Ukraine will be able to, to stabilize the front and not allow the Russians to to break through. If Ukraine in the current circumstances could establish this would be a strategic victory and a very important thing if they could establish this at this very moment. Nevertheless, we have also to be honest. It will be very tough, given the circumstances, and we know that Russia has a limited time frame. I think the Kremlin is very aware of this. The facade, the Putin regime is very strong, but we know that at the same time, structurally, it cannot continue. The situation that they have established now is not sustainable, neither militarily, neither economically, neither politically. We know this. So they have limited time, and I guess that's my view, that they will take the next couple of months to exploit at maximum the difficult position Ukrainian side is right now, and they hope they can maximize their potential right now on the front line. This is a little bit what it will be, a hot summer in Ukraine, if I may say so. Yeah.
Right. So you think that with this, if this military, so currently they're trying to use this opportunity because Ukraine hasn't received all this aid. So they just try to seize the moment, right, and just maximize their gains, right?
Well, both. There are two aspects. I mean, this is indeed Western help, which is far too late and far too slow, clearly, for all political reasons, we know. But another aspect, very important, and this is more internal in Ukraine, is the manpower issue, mobilization, and the very, very important issue of rotation in the Ukrainian armed forces. And this is an issue that doesn't go with Western help, but is an internal issue. And understandably, this is a very difficult issue, specifically because, and this is what makes the distinction between Ukraine and Russia, is that you are coping with a democratic system at war. This means you take the individual seriously, and that this means that imposing mobilization is not that straightforward as in Russia. On the short term, dictatorship has an advantage, between brackets, towards a democratic system, that it can impose mobilization. It can impose, they take it by brutal force, if necessary. And this is on the short term a disadvantage on the Ukrainian side. This is the ambivalence of a democratic system. anyway, this is the situation as it is, and it's quite difficult. Yeah.
And it seems also in light of this failure of Ukrainian side to prepare with defense lines, it seems lots have been taken away. You know, they haven't built them on time.
Look, I consider myself an analyst, you know, and this means I'm not judging too much in terms of mistake, or, I mean, things are happening, are taking place as they happen, and we have to observe as it happens. And there are a couple of things that are quite normal developments. It is impossible for a state to sustain a certain euphoria that Ukraine has known in the very beginning. We know that this kind of you know, emotions erodes over time. We know this. This is not a judgment. This is a normal phenomenon. As I said, for a democracy, it's very difficult to cope with this. And in your interaction with society, keep your, how can I say, your political legitimacy, and at the same time, the impact of the war. To match these is very difficult, you know. So I'm not talking in terms of mistakes, and I'm trying to observe what is going on, this is a situation that we are confronted with.
Right, and in light of this, you mentioned this very important point, I think, about this advantage of totalitarian system, because the Russians have actually, it's much easier for them, right, to structure and to mobilize people and to manipulate the army in the ways they want.
But here also, it is very often said that time is on the side of the Russians, and you can have arguments to buttress this argument. But you may not forget that also time is limited for Putin. And an autocratic regime, as it is very fragile, and every day an authoritarian regime is under threat, and the threat is collapse. We may never forget this. And the point is that every day a black swan event can happen for the regime, you know. And again, as an analyst, it's very important to observe indicators in Russian society that can give indications about what can change or what not, you know. So this is one of the focuses of my research is, do we see elements or developments in Russian society that can indicate change? For the time, it's not the case. For the time, the facade of strength is very powerful, but we know that politically, economically, militarily, the system is fragile. And I always say, I mean, what I want to express is Western countries cannot influence too much Russian society, Russian politics, and so on. But it is the regime itself has the potential to destroy itself. And here we spoke about democracy and autocratic systems. On the long term, democratic systems are much more resilient than authoritarian regimes, you know. And this should be always in the back of our heads, and we may never forget this, because in the end, what we are fighting is a regime, is a type of regime, is a way of life that we will not accept, or should not accept, if I may say it, you know. So yeah, that's important to keep in mind.
And you think the latest this reshuffle in the government signals that this fragile nature of Russian regime?
Well, partly. First of all, we again focus on the spectacular. You know, Shoku, who is leaving his post and goes to and is fading a little bit away from a key post. He becomes now the president of the Security Council. the Secretary of the Security Council. Okay, Patrushev is leaving, and it becomes a personal assistant to the president, and so on and so on. We have to know that the large majority of the government stays in place. You know, so there is not much change at all going on. But what is my point is that it is at the same time a signal of stagnation, because Putin is recruiting from his base of confidence. It is not a question of renewal. It's not a question of re-energizing his policy. So it's for me a sign of stagnation, zastoi, and therefore again, the personal change is not important. The facade of strength is intact, but at the same time, on the longer term, it is a sign of stagnation, and this reminds of the Brezhnev period. You know, where we know what happened. So again, this is a signal of stagnation and a regime that is not developing. You know, that's an important thing to realize also here. And the reshufflement is for me, you know, the illustration of that fact.
So in a way, it's like a stage. So if now it's stagnation, then next one, if they don't transform, then they will fail, right, and collapse from within. Then
yes, clearly. I'm not saying that tomorrow it's the end of Putin or the end of the regime. I'm not saying this. The thing is that structurally it is weak, and that's the case. It is strong until the moment it isn't anymore, you know. And this is a very difficult position to be in as an analyst, because you cannot give a timeline, and you know, an observation without a timeline is no intelligence. It's not very informative. But unfortunately, this is the way it is in Russia.
So, and if it's weak and unstable, then there should be indicators among society groups and people. So those data that we get from them, it's then, I mean, it's Russian based, right? Mostly we cannot see what's happening there, right?
No, but for me, what, if I may, what we observe in big trends right now is that society is consolidating and becoming more strongly behind Putin's war effort. That's clear. But for me, there is one thing that is very important to observe, and it is when people become, how can I say, when they feel betrayed by the government, by the regime, when people can easily support the war, but at the same time feel betrayed by the state, because the state is not fulfilling the promises they have done. And these are the things that we have to look at, you know. And then it becomes to the veterans, the families of those who went to the war, mobilization, and this kind of events we have to observe very closely. Because here the state is in direct contact with society. And it is in that junction that we have to look at indications of change. At the same, and the same is true for economical situation. If the let me say, the households, which is for now not the case, but if the households start to have problems, these are the moments that change can come. And again, we may not think too much in moral categories or in black and white. People can can be very, very contradictory. They can be in favor of the war, but at the same time feel betrayed by the state and become anti-war, you know. So all these figures we have about a stable majority of society that is supporting the war is fragile too, you know. And if I may, if we look at these figures, we know that there are two sides, 15–20% of societies who are in favor, well, in favor or against the war, but there is a majority of people who say perhaps we are in favor of the war, but they can change very quickly if the situation is changing in society. And this, let's say, this 60% of society, these gray people who say, you know, we support the war, but they can flip over overnight. And this is what we have to look at, in my view.
So my question is, because I had the impression that they have like this follow the leader mentality, so they are not really like democratic or ready to question. You said they can flip overnight, but how to create this fertile ground so they flip when there are some changes and demolition of this regime? That's but like again, the problem question.
Again, I repeat a little bit here myself. Unfortunately, I don't think we have much impact on this. It is a regime that is able to be help. So the destruction, the self-destruction of this system, as it is non-sustainable, this is the thing that we have to watch, you know. And we don't have active measures to influence this. And moreover, I would even say that we create perverse effects if we push too much on this, on Russian society, because it will consolidate society more behind Putin than we actually want to achieve with our measures, you know.
I have a question. In one of your articles, you wrote about this, that the regime already was undermined by Yevgeny Prigozhin's death, right? So it was one of the blows that potentially could have demolished the regime, right? But already weakened it, right?
Yeah, and indirectly, I believe this is related with the reshufflement in the MOD. Apparently, but these are rumors, but apparently within, well, corruption is, we know, the MOD is corrupt, we know, because there is too much money, and the potential for corruption is even higher because more and more money is pouring in the MOD, clearly. That there was a rivalry between Prigozhin and, you know, some people related to Shogun in the MOD, and it was this internal struggle that has actually ignited this rivalry, with the result that Prigozhin has done what he did. We can develop this, but the point is here that indeed, this is for me an illustration that the system itself has all the potential to destroy itself due to corruption, to greed from some people, and people who feel left out or not being able to participate, you know. So again, corruption is a very interesting thing to observe because it is a potential for self-destruction.
Yeah, I see. So, and you think that, I mean, looking back at Ukraine, you think, is there a way Ukraine can improve its response to Russia's efforts? Because it seems like the very low morale, like after the Zaluzhny's departure, you know, now this morale is all-time low. It's really not going well.
As I said in the very beginning, it would be an enormous success this year, 2024, if Ukraine can stabilize the front line. And this is not, as always, this is not only a military task. This is much more broader than that. This is related with morale of society, morale of politicians, morale of the commanders, and can they keep the cohesion? And this is for me the big challenge for the Ukrainian side at this very moment. And we have to watch out that after the counter-revolution, so-called, end up in a failure, so-called, that you not end up in a negative spiral, of negativism. We could rephrase what we said before. The negative spiral should be turned around, and again, in the positive, in the mobilization, in the rotation of people, and in the rebuilding of the morale, and this goes clearly. This goes with results on the front line. So it is much broader than just the soldier in the trenches who was fighting the Russians. It is, this is a definition of total war. We are fighting a total war, and this means that society, politics, military, economy is fighting all together, and Ukraine being in a difficult spot. I mean, the political genius should be to return and to change it into a positive mood. Very difficult, but this is the challenge of 2024 for the Ukrainians, in my view.
And just one more quick question. It seems like in the informational field, Russia is actually have an advantage, meaning it has really good impact with this on European society, on US based people. Like they do this informational warfare techniques. Yes, they apply them, and it seems like they say they're actually quite convincing, because I mean, maybe earlier after the war started, it wasn't that obvious, but now it seems like they're actually gaining ground. Yeah. Is there a way to counteract that, you think, those narratives they try to promote?
I'm more impressed with what is called also cognitive warfare of the Russians and the impact they have in our societies than their military, efforts on the ground. They are not very spectacular. They are repeating all the mistakes from the past, and so on and so on. Indeed, people are, and now I'm talking about Western countries, are not aware of we are at war with Russia. I mean, and this is the tragedy. Russia has imposed the war on us by, for instance, hybrid and cognitive techniques. And the point is that on the cognitive front line, they are very strong. They are able to manipulate us, and without we, if you are not in defense and security matters, we don't realize in what kind of word they are manipulating us. And that's very, very tricky and very, very difficult. They try to destroy some kind of basic consensuses in our societies, and in that sense, destroying democracy. And we talked before about democracy standing opposed to a authoritarian regime. What Russia is trying to do is destroy democracy, and this is very grave. This is existential, and that's why Ukrainian war is also our war. Because they are trying to exploit all the divisions in our societies. They try to make us think differently about our own politics, and so that we are going in that mode of intellectual destroying our system ourselves. And unfortunately, the Russians are very, very good in this. And we are not aware enough about the impact on our societies.
So there is a huge gap then for research and to identify those ways they do it then, and to counteract them, because it seems like
absolutely. And again, this is even we use the concept of total war. I mean, the Russians are using here our minds. So the battlefield is one thing, but the war of the minds, which is not that brutal, is not that obvious, but is very, very destructive. And we should be aware of this, and we should take care of this very, very closely.
All right, thanks. And do you have anything else you think I didn't cover by my questions to add? One last message.
No, what I say is regularly, I think, because I'm a former military, I think about the soldiers who stand into the trenches, and if you think about this, it goes with a lot of respect for those people who do this and who have the courage to do this. And the fact that we in Western countries are not aware enough about this, neither in society, neither with our politicians, it's dreadful, and it's it's a tragedy that Russia is imposing this on us, and is using all kinds of techniques to put themselves on the moral high ground, and that even people following this is very, very dangerous, and I'm very concerned about this.
Dr. Bladel, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.